Hi, everyone. Welcome to CodeSec Days 2024. We are really excited to be here with you, and we have this wonderful panel here to start kicking things off for us. So our first topic that we're going to talk about today is how to augment DevSecOps with AI. And I'm going to go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves. Mackenzie, could you kick us off?
Sure, yeah. My name is Mackenzie Jackson. I work with GitGuardian. I've been with GitGuardian since some of the earlier days of the company, coming on 5 years now. And I am a security and developer advocate. Essentially, it's my role to work with research teams and developers and create research content around application security and now AI security as well. So that's me.
Wonderful. And Antonio?
Hi, everyone. My name is Antonio Mayo. I'm Managing Director with Protiviti. Protiviti is a global consulting firm, and we do many different kinds of consulting. I lead our technology consulting practice across Canada, where I'm based. Also a 12-time Microsoft MVP, a very proud member of that Microsoft MVP program. And that simply means I spend a lot of time in the community speaking at conferences, blogging, podcasting, speaking on panels like this. So very happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Sonia?
Hi everyone, I'm Sonia Moise. I'm a staff security advocate at Snyk. So I'm part of the DevRel team. I'm also a GitHub stars at GitHub, and I also do write a lot of blog posts for Free Code Camp and a mentor for women in tech. But really happy to be here also to participate to this panel.
Wonderful. And Christian?
Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm really glad to be here. Christian Dupuis from Docker. I'm a senior principal engineer, primarily working on Docker Scout these days and across Docker official images, Hub, and registry, all things security at this point.
Wonderful. So that's the panel. I am moderating. I'm Rachel Stevens. I'm a senior analyst with Redmonk. We focus on technology adoption trends. And so I'm really excited to get the points of view of these lovely folks. So let's dive right in. One of the things that I think is really interesting about the AI world right now is that I feel like we're operating in the space of like two sides of fear. Like you have like the FOMO side of fear of not picking AI up fast enough, and also the fear side of like, what if we do this wrong? What if there are new risks, new surface and attack areas? And so fully knowing that there's probably a little bit of both in these scenarios. Like it is both a tool and an accelerant and a huge opportunity, and there's also new risks that come with this. Can you maybe give us kind of a flavor of how you're approaching this problem space right now? And like, are you focused on threat mitigation? Are you focused on kind of speed of adoption? How are you thinking about this? Sonia, could you kick us off?
Sure. So for on our side at Snyk, we're more on the awareness piece at first. So we try to educate developers on the risk that we're actually finding for the GenAI powered tools and the security vulnerabilities that it could potentially actually introduce into our code base. So having this parallel with this is great to use GenAI tools. As you said, you can be more efficient. It's increased productivity. But just to make sure that you always verify everything through your pipeline by introducing those security tools, just to make sure that you capture this newly produced code, the same that you would do if you copy paste code from Stack Overflow or just the code that you write as proprietary code within your company. Just that awareness and understanding of the risks involved in using GenAI tools.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts here?
I would say that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I completely agree with what you said there too, Rachel, as the two sides of the coin. I feel like the ship has sailed long ago of the argument of should we use Gen AI? Because if the answer to that is no and you attempt to I don't know, ban it like some companies have, I feel like you're fighting, just a losing battle. And so the approach of what we've always adopted is let's steer people and guide our internal teams to using AI in appropriate ways, making sure we're using the correct tools, that they're trained on the best data that they can be, and kind of embracing it. Because I guess in a way it felt like that decision was kind of almost made for us, right? You could walk around any studio and you're going to see ChatGPT or some other AI system open up on someone's machine, whether you've decided to use that or not as a company, almost it seems at this point. And then the other side of that, kind of embracing it, there's a lot that we can use AI for, and it's not great at everything. In fact, it's quite bad at a lot of things. But but it can be really interesting in enriching experiences, enriching data, and kind of taking it from the next level if you have a solid starting point. So, I mean, at GitGuardian, that's what we're focusing on is taking it the data that we have and being able to enrich that for our developers internally and then also our customers on the platform. So I guess that's kind of our approach of looking at it. The ship sailed. We're all on board, whether we're being towed behind screaming or whether we're standing up a dock. We're on board, and it's time to embrace it and do it as responsibly as we
can. That's an evocative metaphor. Antonio, what were you going to say?
So what we've seen from most of our customers are enterprise grade customers. And what we've seen from them is the drive to use AI to have everyone within the organization use AI is typically coming from the top down, which is amazing. We don't often see that with technology changes or transformation, but literally from the chairman of the board, the CEO, asking their executive team, so how are we going to leverage AI? And that filtering down to everyone else. So we've seen a real drive from the top down to push it. And where we've seen organizations start with it is starting with the basics. So looking at their acceptable use policies, for example, and updating those for AI capabilities, generative AI and the like. Because many of them were written a long time ago, and some people read them, some people don't read them, but updating them with this notion of generative AI, what data can you include? What data should you not include? What should you use it for? What should you not use it for? Those are all things that we see those policies getting updated for. So that tends to be the starting point. But then getting more specific, we're helping our customers understand how they're going to govern their generative AI tools for DevSecOps and other purposes. That often focuses on, and this is stuff that both I think Sonia and Mackenzie touched on. It focuses on things like strengthening rules around data quality, transparency, human oversight, accountability, really building trustworthiness within the organization for AI systems. And that of course takes work and education. That tends to be the starting point that we're saying.
Yeah. Trustworthy data is huge. And also I'm looking forward to the AI reading the acceptable use policy and summarizing it for the teams, because I'm guessing that most people don't actually read all of those things. But maybe we can make it super meta. Christian, anything on your end?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Like what I've seen around me, a couple of interesting observations probably is that, like us selling products, it's quite interesting to see how fast some of the more traditional enterprises like banks, they just kind of go ahead and, as Antonio said, right, they just go ahead and sign the purchase order of I don't know, like whatever AI tool you want to, like, and for us, it takes sometimes months, almost up to a year to kind of land a deal with them. So it's really interesting to see how this emergence of AI is changing how people are almost see it as a competitive advantage, as an advantage towards their own like workforce, right? It's all about like empowering your workforce. You want to have that tool at your disposal. Otherwise, I think a lot of companies feel the risk of like, hey, we're going to lose people, right? Because they really want to use these tools. So we need to give it to them as fast as possible. And then internally, I've seen change with myself, right? I wasn't a big kind of advocate and believer in this, and I only now recently got on a plane to Chicago and realized, hey, I'm offline, and suddenly none of these little helpers worked for me anymore, and I was like, okay, now I really changed. My whole attitude towards this AI thing has completely changed, and I realized this by not having it anymore, right? Because you don't, like, if you use these things in your tools, you often don't really understand and realize, which is one of the challenges, right? Like it goes back to like acceptable use policy, what data can you use, where can you use it on? So yeah, it's interesting what that industry is changing around us, like from a customer relations perspective, internally, like, and kind of like workforce enablement and all these kind of productivity gains. And it's going to be an interesting next decade, I would say.
For sure. I have a question just as you're seeing adoption of these tools. One of my questions is, does it seem like this is grassroots or top down? And I think we covered that pretty well. One of my questions is, where in the org are you seeing this come in then? Like, is it primarily developer teams? Is it throughout the entire engineering team? Is it beyond the engineering team? Like, where are you actually starting to see this adoption?
Let me jump in there. Interestingly, we see it everywhere. I'm very much embedded in the engineering team, product development. Of course, we use kind of all the tools that we all know, right? Copilot and like some other AI assistant that we can use. But I also hear it from our sales department, and like all people are looking and just up-leveling the quality of their work artifacts, right? By running, I don't know, let's say a spell check, or just kind of, hey, can you help me change the tone of this document, this blog post, right? And whatnot. So I would say it's pretty much everywhere that we see kind of like this coming in, and that at least is new to me. It started from the top, but it's now kind of like picks up speed by itself.
So I think my question behind the question that I would love to hear your thoughts on is, I feel like we hear a lot about the Copilot tools that are helping do code assistance. Do you feel like AI has kept up in terms of its adoption in the rest of the like pipeline and the SDLC, or are we still new there?
I can. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
Christian.
Mackenzie.
Continue. No, I was just going to say from the GitGuardian's perspective, it's been quite interesting because when a new technology comes out, there was a group of people in I guess a small group and a lot of different teams that embrace the technology, and we kind of decided early on to go full steam down the embracement path. We developed and deployed a coding assistant. We didn't develop the coding assistant. I just want to be clear that my phrasing was a little bit ambiguous there, but we helped kind of lead a coding assistant and nurture that down away, and we released that to the internal development team, expecting a huge kind of uptick of it. And it was actually quite slow to adopt in a lot of other areas. And I think the marketing team was probably one that embraced kind of generative AI the most. And then it's been kind of trickling through the engineering teams. Some caught on and grasped onto it, understood the value of it really quickly. Others needed kind of more convincing. And, it's for us, it's kind of interesting. I know it kind of goes against the grain. And I talked before about we're all on the boat and of AI, and as organizations we are. But there are still laggards in this that are skeptical of the technology. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know how others have felt like rolling out AI internally in their system. If it had the same approach, or if they've had different experiences from it, it'd be interesting. But at GitGuardian, it's been interesting that I guess like a lot of technology, you have a group that really embraces it, that attaches onto it, and the others need encouragement to make this part of the workflow.
Sonia, did you have any success in terms of like cross-team coordination at Snyk, and like how did you all think about this? Because I know one of the things that you had talked about with me in the past is like the worries about shadow AI being kind of like shadow IT, and so I would love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen it with some of our customers where, and this will depend on the industry. Obviously, they're part of, because some industries are a little bit more locked down on the type of tools that might be using. So yeah, they're still in the learning and awareness process, wanting to understand a little bit more how GenAI is functioning, if it can add value to their workflow. But yeah, usually going back to the shadow AI. So this is basically, we know the term shadow IT, which is basically employees or developers that bypass the list of vetted tools by the IT departments or other teams. So this could be applied to also the AI ecosystem with, we call it shadow AI. So basically the company had a vetted list of AI tools, and if ChatGPT is not part of it, developers will potentially use ChatGPT and copy paste some of their intellectual property in it, and it bypasses this. So we've potentially we might be seeing this in companies if they don't have, as we mentioned, security policies, guideline awareness around those. But this is more in terms of adoption, I'd say.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on trends in adoption? Let's go for it.
What we've seen is majority of adoption happening with information workers and knowledge workers just using generative AI to produce content, so content creators type of thing. We've seen a little bit of adoption by development teams and SDLC, different roles within SDLC, but not a lot, in fact, not yet. Still skeptical and trying out the various tools. Sometimes see them as the generative AI tools as a good starting point, but certainly not as a major enhancement yet. At least that's been our experience so far. In terms of the point about organizations using or individuals within organizations using shadow AI, to your point, Sonia, we have seen a lot of that and concerns around that. And we've been helping organizations implement policies where they can monitor that, where they can monitor what generative AI tools are people using within their organization on their work devices. Microsoft recently announced their AI hub at the RSA conference 2 weeks ago, which allows you to actually see that and enforce policies around that. So that's interesting. That's something that literally just came into public preview about a week and a half ago, and we're just starting to play with and help organizations to understand. But that is a major concern, the idea of shadow AI right now.
So I think one of the things that's really interesting, and you kind of touched on this, Antonio, is that we have slower adoption in other parts of the engineering space. And it totally makes sense that people are not in the place where like they would like the AI to push to production. Like that I think we're all in agreement that we're not there yet. And if we're thinking about if we have this influx of code that is being written by GenAI, and we're trying to now think about the security side of the house of how are we actually going to deal with this influx of code. We have to kind of start thinking, it's like, is there an AI answer in the security space that can come into this? And so my question here is, like, can a vanilla LLM actually provide enough value there that it makes a meaningful difference in an organization's security posture? Or does this need to be something that is especially like fine-tuned trained or using a RAG model or a small language model? Like, is there a way that we should be thinking about kind of how to position the security side of the house to keep up with the GenAI development side of the house?
I have a quick example on that. So I'm not going to name the company, but I just have a funny example on that company implemented ChatGPT into their chatbots. So which is good because it's enhancing the customer experience with the knowledge base. But what happened? It was a vehicle company, and by using prompt injection, because from where we're guessing from that experiment is they've actually didn't set up security guardrails. So from prompt injection, the user were able to buy a vehicle for $1, which wasn't the expected outcome that you'd expect for their car dealership. But this is just an example of implementing an LLM directly through a chatbot without actually setting up safety or security guardrails. And also not understanding the risks involved in LLMs. And this goes, I've mentioned prompt injection, which is part of the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, LLMs for applications, which has been released last year by OWASP. This is actually a good starting point for companies to better understand what are the risks and the vulnerabilities associated with LLMs. And prompt injection is the top one on it. And yeah, this potentially could happen with vanilla LLMs.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The LLMs are the ones that out the box LLMs, vanilla LLMs are really good at doing certain generic tasks, and they do them so well that it's kind of mind bending at first. But you kind of also you quickly find their limitations when you're kind of discovering them. One of the things that GitGuardian's known for is secrets detection. So, I'm sure everyone's had the moment where ChatGPT kind of releases something. You go, oh, is this the day we're no longer relevant? Like, like this. And so we, benchmarked the ChatGPT, and basically to scan an enterprise, you're looking at about $100,000 of compute power to scan kind of a large enterprise code base. We scan all of GitHub every day, and we calculated more than $100,000 of scanning every day in that. And that's just because LLMs are very heavy. They're not fine-tuned. They're not fantastic at doing certain jobs. So there's certain elements that it can be done. And I think what's really important is, if you're looking at it from security tools, is where do you leverage AI in your tool? Because I think everyone's looking at leveraging AI at some point in their tools. And the approach that we've really started to adopt is to look at making sure that we're adding context and that we're tackling the areas that is the biggest struggle. One of the areas that the biggest struggle for organizations in our field is we can scan for vulnerabilities fairly well now. I think a lot of security tools can do that. Where a lot of organizations fail is the remediation of that. The next step is like, okay, how do we actually start resolving some of these issues, some of these security flaws? And we've found that kind of allowing for context from AI systems to be able to do that, to enrich the standing data, that can be quite good if those AI systems are trained on high quality data sets to be able to do that. So I think it's not just about kind of taking the out the box thing. It's about training it on data, but it's also about where do you implement it, because it's not going to work to implement it throughout everywhere. And I feel like that's also a really important question when we're talking about that.
Rachel, perhaps to jump in on that one for a second, a couple of points you raised I wanted to touch on. So in terms of the developer community, I think you said this, not having as much adoption around AI, generative AI tools is kind of what we're saying here. I think that's to be expected. In the developer community, we often have a good understanding of machine learning models, what neural networks look like, what the algorithms behind the scenes look like, and this notion of AI being such an overhyped term right now. I think we as part of the developer community, and I haven't developed code in a very long time, but I used to, can see through the veil of that kind of overhyped term, right? So the idea that AI is going to take over my job as a software developer, sorry, I just don't believe it, but I do think it is a useful assistant to help us in a lot of different areas. So just to touch on that point. But then your other point about security and large language models, I think we're starting to see some of that emerge. Some of the stuff that Mackenzie said a moment ago, I think those tools are very helpful. But if we think about the LLMs, the ones that are out there, they're not designed or optimized for accuracy, right? They're designed and optimized to give you the next best conversational response. And yes, many of them out there can be accurate, and sometimes are and often are, but sometimes they're not. And I think having a healthy degree of skepticism around what they do output is important, so that although it's showing us vulnerabilities in our code, in our systems, having people validate that and then proceed with the remediation, having people do that as opposed to AI systems do that. I think that's an important aspect of this that we need to hear more about in the community. Because you're right, I think we see vulnerabilities being surfaced, Mackenzie, but I don't see a lot of the remediation happening yet.
Christian, anything from you on this one?
Yeah, I was just like, when, like, every time, like, at least that's what I observe when talking to a lot of our customers. Like, it's just interesting to observe where the industry overall is when it comes to like automated remediation, right? I think we tried a couple of approaches with like automated pull requests, and like the acceptance of these is just not, I think personally, where it should be or where it has to be. So it's just interesting to observe, like, people aren't yet at the phase where they need these kinds of like automated remediation tools, right? They're still struggling to even understand where they are with their security posture. Mm-hmm. So like internally, we have this maturity model of the like software supply chain security, and like there, it all starts with like flying blind, and then goes into like the observability bit, knowing what you have, what is running where are you potentially vulnerable, and then the next step is kind of like the automated remediation. And I think like sometimes I personally think we are already further ahead in that journey with our industry. And then I'm faced with reality talking to customers in like traditional like big corp and big enterprises, and they still kind of like in this early phase. And then they have security teams kind of like throwing issues over the fence and saying, hey, you go fix this. So whatever we can do to kind of like make this journey from like the observability bit into the remediation bit easier and kind of like have less burden on the developer ultimately, who are the people that need to go and fix these things. I think that's going to be the game changer, at least for our industry here as like security specialists and working in the security field and helping people to secure their supply chain. I have not seen a lot of like as other people said earlier before me here I haven't seen those tools yet, those specialized LLMs. I'm sure they'll come, right? If you see the speed at which GitHub Copilot with advanced security is improving in this area, I think that will be the big shift that we'll see.
Yeah, I just want to double tap on something there too. Is when I was talking about using AI for remediation, I'm really talking about using AI to provide context so a human can make the decisions on the remediation. Like adding the additional steps, because the bottleneck that we see is that you have a developer that's perhaps included a vulnerability, in the case of GitGuardian, likely a secret or something. A security team will pick it up through one of their tools, but there's a whole lot of context missing. Like, what is the vulnerability deal with? Is it for production? Is it for a test environment? Is this live? Is this for a critical system? It's information like that and context that we can provide, that an AI system can help provide context for, but not actually kind of take the next step in automating it, but to provide additional information. I think I just don't think I made that clear enough in my original statements. I wanted just to double tap, but I totally agree with everything that everyone has said so far.
Yeah, I think that all makes good sense. And if you look at just where the industry is in terms of adopting like CI versus CD, and then you see the discrepancy there, like, I think we're quite a ways away from AI-based auto remediation in terms of having that general level of trust. I really loved the way that we started to get into the supply chain topic with you, Christian. And I think that that's a really big topic that is on a lot of enterprise just radar right now. And it's from things like the XZ exploit all the way down to all these different things where we're feeling a lot of different risks in terms of what's coming into our pipelines. And AI is just a new vector in that area. And I'm curious, have you started to have kind of supply chain conversations or anything that starts to focus around what AI as part of the supply chain looks like?
I can jump on that one. So I've seen a couple of examples, especially with these agent-based. So, for example, if an agent has access to your inbox and to summarize the emails that you're getting for a current day, so this is great for efficiency and productivity. But imagine if that agent got compromised, then you get access to all the sensitive data in your inbox because you actually gave read access to your inbox through that agent, which is a great entry point. Because imagine that agent can connect to all of the Gmail accounts. That's a huge attack surface, for example. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, also adding to the complexity and to increase the attack surface with all the entry points that we could have with GenAI and within your pipeline if you're implementing other AI tools. So obviously this is part of the awareness exercise as well, because some people don't consider AI as part of the supply chain. So this is also something that we need to also educate and be aware of.
Yeah. Just to continue on from that, there was a cool concept that I explored and played around with, and I was looking at some AI email assistants, as you say, Sonia, and you can actually do prompt injection via an external email. with some assistance. So sending a malicious email and getting it to do it. In my case, I got the assistant to talk in the accent of a pirate, but then to add a malicious link into it. So I mean, it's really interesting, and you can quickly start seeing all the alarming use cases for this, particularly if the assistant has the ability to send emails. That you could have a malicious email come in and then all of a sudden compromise your system. But in the more traditional sense of software supply chain, AI also brings in other threats. AI hallucinations is something that's we're familiar with, where AI just spits out bullshit, but in a very confident way. So it's like we all have a friend like that, right? So I mean, AI is very, very, very good at it. But one of the things that it can spit out is if you actually ask it to come up with open source packages. Some experiments have been done that about 30% of them, roughly, are hallucinated, which means they don't exist. And then so if you take kind of like a traditional approach, like something like typo squatting, and you mix it with AI hallucination, is okay. If you can find hallucinated packages and create them, you could potentially trick someone using AI. So we can't blindly trust these systems. And then the other side of the coin is your developers are using AI. So now ChatGPT accounts are part of your supply chain as well, which could potentially contain sensitive information, which we've seen. So, I mean, the supply chain implications of AI are it's kind of exhausting and terrifying at the same. But as I said at the start, I'm maintaining my metaphor. We're all on the boat, so it's part of the supply chain now, whether we like it or not.
Tonio, any thoughts from you on this one?
It's an interesting one. I agree with Sonia and Mackenzie's comments there. Where we've seen this take us into is things like validating the various partners you work with throughout your supply chain. So assessing organizations for third-party risk, fourth-party risk, all of the organizations that you partner with, and how are they using AI in their organizations. And because often within our environments, we will share information with them. We will open up our environment to those third parties and fourth parties to partner with us on things or deploy services through the supply chain. So this isn't really, I don't think this is a software development topic from the comments that I'm making, but certainly that's one of the aspects that we look at is assessing third parties and fourth parties for how are they managing their AI, and how are they leveraging it? How do they enable employees to use it or not use it or control it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It goes into a lot of different areas very quickly.
Yeah, it's a turtles all the way down situation there. Yeah. So I'm curious then if let's end on a positive note, because the supply chain question's kind of scary and overwhelming. So let's wrap this up on what are you actually excited about in terms of the GenAI space, and what can it do to help us enhance our security posture, and what can it bring to the table in terms of our workflows, our processes? What gets you excited about the possibility? Christian, can you kick us off?
Well, I'm maybe I should kind of put this in context of what I'm mostly worried about right now.
Okay.
And I alluded to this earlier, right? How do we move the industry forward into this next phase of remediating and taking these security concerns more serious? And I think that to me is kind of what I'm mostly excited about right now, like more specialized LLMs that take local context, like your environment, your organization, but enrich it with all the information that, we have Snyk here, we have other security providers like GitGuardian, right? There's a lot of valuable information, and this is all about open source, right? How can we utilize this and kind of have everyone benefit from that great data and help move the industry forward overall, and that to me is something that excites me personally. And just on my day-to-day work, getting more efficient and faster and more productive with the various AI tools is kind of the thing that I do today. Makes me and my teammates more productive, writing kind of PRD documents and all that. I think that's all low-hanging fruit. Really excited about what might come down the line when we kind of get together and use all that data to really figure out, as Mackenzie said earlier, right? Provide this additional context, and based on the context, what's the next step then, right? what can you actually do to kind of help remediate these things?
Love that. Sonia, what about you?
Well, I do love all these technologies. I think I was one of the first to try ChatGPT when it was out, just to have a sense of it. So I'm a great advocate of AI and GenAI tools, but obviously on the security side, you need to also double check and not over rely on these tools. But I'm also curious to see everything related to regulations and laws at potentially state level. We've seen some momentum from the White House with the bill that released on that topic, and also the EU Act more around accountability for companies using AI. So I'm more interested in the momentum that we're having here, and this would be accountability around how to use this AI tools around hallucinations, potential risks also. So yeah, and also the role that all of these companies behind those LLMs are also, if they want to enforce securities, because I've seen some principles in Google. They do have the 7 principles, including ethics, diversity, safety measures, and all of those. But it would be interesting to see more of those are coming from these companies.
Antonia, what about you?
So I love the fact that we're just at the forefront of this, right? Like, when was ChatGPT released? Like, what, 18 months ago? And so much has happened in this space in the last 18 months, and so many people are talking about it. So many new tools have been released. Like, we've talked a lot about security here. I work primarily in the Microsoft space, but I've loved learning about the GitGuardian tools here as part of preparing for this panel. Some excellent tools coming out from GitGuardian, some great tools coming out from Microsoft on this space. We're just at the forefront of things like Security Copilot. It was just, it went GA April 1st. Like, what's that, 7 weeks ago? We're just at the forefront of this, and there's still so much that needs to happen. There's so much space for us to jump in and help our customers in this space. So I'm very excited about the possibilities. I try to use an overly used term right now. I try to ground my my thoughts around AI in the fact that we're just at the beginning. These tools aren't very mature yet, and there's still a lot for us to do. So I'm very excited about that and the opportunities that it presents itself.
Yeah, I think I come at it from a very similar approach to what Antonio was saying. One of the things that excites me is, I guess 2 things. One is that we have a gold mine of data that we can't touch because we just don't know how, and I think AI is going to really help us actually kind of get through a lot of the information that I think is just kind of sitting there waiting to be sorted, waiting for people to be able to do interesting things with it. And the other side of the coin is, the computer really was leveled the playing field from some massive companies to make it possible for young startups to be able to do really impressive things to start with, and the same with open source and these. And I feel like AI is potential. I think it's too early to say it's there, but it has extreme potential to be able to be another leveler where people that have creative solutions and ideas or innovative ways to deal with big data sets and things, they now have a tool that they can do that without a massive team, and we can kind of start taking those next steps. We're not there yet, but it's exciting to see, and I think as long as we keep at least half of the security folks keep at least half of their brain optimistic, it will be fine. But it can be daunting when we're dealing with security, especially when you're dealing with a new technology in its infancy. There's a lot to sort through and figure out at the moment.
Mackenzie, I think one of the things you're saying is it's helping to level the playing field from large corporations to startups to individuals being able to, AI tools combined with readily available cloud computing is helping to level that playing field for a lot of us, which is amazing.
Any other final thoughts before we wrap up? All right. Well, panelists, thank you so much for your time today. This was a fantastic discussion and a great way to kick off the CodeSec days. I really appreciate you both helping us be optimistic and also not getting carried away by the hype. So we're delighted to have you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, let me hit stop on the recording. Okay, everyone, just don't